Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and today we continue the Fantasy Files series with a look at Chase Edmonds in this Arizona Cardinals backfield. We got James Conner there now. I know. It goes through Kyler Murray, but we still have plenty of other guys that will be carrying the ball as well. And if you haven't heard, Kyler Murray is saying that he wants to run less in 2021. Not something I'm super worried about. Lamar Jackson said the same thing last year, and we saw after their bye week, he returned to running the piss out of the ball because sometimes when you're a quarterback that's so good at running, if you take away the best thing that you're really good at, the offense doesn't work as well. So Kyler, one of those things where I'll believe it when I see it. Like, okay, he might not be on pace to break the single season yardage record on the ground again. But either way, he's going to finish as a top 3 rushing quarterback, behind maybe only Lamar and, potentially Josh Allen, but I would say Kyler should still be the overwhelming favorite to finich second. Maybe Jalen Hurts messes around and just gets there on volume. But either way, we're going to see these running backs continue to be involved. And, it starts with Chase Edmonds and what he could potentially do here in the system that really has thrived. I know Kliff Kingsbury coming to the Cardinals, we were thinking it was going to be the next big thing with this air raid offense. They've just had the 16th and 13th ranked scoring offenses. And really, the air raid, I think it was, I want to say Rich Rebar, awesome guy, but he was the first one to say like the horizontal raid. I think he had a better name than that, so my bad for that. But it makes sense. They don't throw the ball downfield. Kyler's had some flashy highlights. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is great, but it's more been a good offense because of their rushing attack. They rank 5th in terms of both rushing yards and rushing scores on the ground. They've done it with a pretty middling offensive line. A lot of their success, I think, comes from Kyler Murray and what he's able to bring to the table in that zone read game and RPOs and all that junk. So, the run game has been great in Arizona and it's not necessarily going anywhere. We just got to make sure Edmonds is indeed good enough to handle the rushing workload. He hasn't been this injury prone guy by any stretch, played in 45 or 48 games since entering the league. Problem is he just hasn't been very good on the ground in terms of most of our efficiency metrics. PFF's 61st ranked running back in PFF rushing grade since 2018 among 97 qualified players, 75th in missed tackles forced per attempt, 4.4 yards per carry, 2.6 yards after contact per attempt. Those are in the top 40. He's just been, at best an average runner of the football. Receiving is where he has been great. And this is 2020 alone when they were actually starting to use him a lot more like in the design passing game. This dude was lining up in the slot a good amount and getting fed, screens right at the line of scrimmage. Again, the horizontal raid offense was very friendly to Edmonds in 2020, and he made the most of it. 8th highest PFF receiving grade among 46 qualified backs, 7th in reception, 6th in receiving yards, tied for 3rd in receiving touchdowns, tied for 19th in yards per catch, tied for 14th in yards per route run, and 2nd in percentage of catchable balls caught. So Edmonds last year, PPR darling, and we've actually seen him now have 8 separate occasions playing at least 50% of the offensive snaps. Now, 2 of these games were when we had, no Kenyan Drake or David Johnson. He actually racked up 90% plus snap thresholds as the featured starter. But these also include some other games where he just happened to play a little bit more with Drake, probably on the bench because due to game script. So anyway, in these 8 games, we've seen the ceiling and we've also seen, fairly low floor. Anyway, the finishes, RB1, RB5, RB14, RB19, RB21, RB30, RB40, and an RB54 finish. I believe that was in that disaster against the Saints when he got hurt shortly into the second half. Anyway, so the biggest issue for Edmonds is the potential goal line work. And I've been very clear over the years that I think the idea of a goal line back, your Mike Tolberts of the world, your true vultures at the goal line, it's overrated. We just don't see teams, stop the momentum of their offense and put in a running back just so they can freaking yam the ball in from the 1. 9 times out of 10, I would say the team keeps whatever running back is out there on the field on the goal line when the offense moves down into that situation. If there's a timeout called or if there's a stoppage of play for a replay or something, sure, then they'll probably get whoever the best true option is. Just realize we don't see these situations where an RB2 on a team has, 25 rush attempts inside the 5-yard line. The RB1 is just getting taken out every single time. With that said, I think there's 2 primary potential exceptions we need to worry about. One is with Austin Eckler in Los Angeles, and the other one is Chase Edmonds with the Cardinals. Chase Edmonds, people, only has only one career carry inside the 5-yard line. Now, he's been good as a receiver. So by that scenario, I don't want to say the Cardinals don't trust him. He did convert all 4 of his targets inside the 10-yard line in the touchdowns last year. You got to trust the guy to throw him the ball inside the, that close to the goal line. So I'm not saying it's necessarily his fault with this, but it's not good, guys. 1 carry, that's problematic. And, we'll get to, why it's potentially a good thing for James Conner here right now, because without Kenyan Drake, we now have 239 available carries in this offense. So yeah, Edmonds going to get it, but Conner could actually be a lot more involved than we think. He did join this team, I think, in large part because his former running backs coach, James Saxton, who was with the Steelers until 2018, is there with Arizona. So credit to Conner, who, was essentially written off as being too injury prone. He played 13 games last year, and 2 of his 3 missed appearances were just directly due to COVID. So we didn't see his body break down like many thought it would. And the one thing Conner has been excellent at throughout his entire career is his usage on the goal line. In terms of 38 running backs with at least 15 goal line carries since 2017, James Conner is first in PFF rushing grade, 4th in touchdown conversion rate at 55%, and 1st in first down or touchdown rate at 62%. So, Conner still only 26. He is far bigger than Edmonds, and he's with a running back coach that knows he can do this and convert near the goal line. And honestly, that running back coach saw the better years of Conner's career, so might be, experiencing a little bit of, looking back a little too fondly at the past. I wouldn't say, though, the other thing, even if you think Conner is this washed player, which I don't think is fair, he averaged 4.3 yards per carry on an atrocious Pittsburgh Steelers offensive behind an atrocious Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line last year. His average of 0.21 forced missed tackles per carry was the same as Alvin Kamara. He gained more yards after contact per rush than Josh Jacobs and Ezekiel Elliott, only by 0.1, but you can't really find a stat that shows you that James Conner is as washed as a lot of people think he is. I'm not going to sit here and say the film looked fantastic. There were portions of the year where it looked like Benny Snell was the superior running back. Just realize, if the Cardinals think James Conner is capable of handling this work, I don't think he's just going to completely bust if they decide to give him the volume. And to his credit, if we want to hold the offensive line standard, which I've again told you guys a stat, you can probably recite it in your sleep now about how the PFF's top 5 and bottom 5 run blocking offensive lines last year each produced 4 top 24 PPR backs. Maybe you think I'm full of shit with that. And in that case, we should be in on James Conner because he's going to a much better offensive line. And, the Cardinals, again, I think it's more scheme that creates the holes the way they do, because this was PFF's 24th ranked offensive line PFF run blocking grade last year, but they were 4th in yards before contact per rush. So 19th in run plays versus 8 plus defenders in the box. Steelers were 23rd. Cardinals are 11th in PFF's 2021 offensive line rankings. Steelers come in at 29th, and the Steelers finished last year as the 2nd worst offensive line in PFF run blocking grade. So Conner is getting a massive upgrade in terms of his offensive line. And he's on a team that seems like they don't have the goal line back to really challenge him at the goal line. So we'll see what's what. At the end of the day, though, I do lean towards Conner not being super involved here. We have seen them feed Chase Edmonds snap rates north of 90% when Drake and David Johnson were missing time. And we conveniently just had a report come out yesterday. I'm recording this on a Thursday from Pro Football Network's Adam Beasley, who reports Chase Edmonds is the favorite to be the team's featured back. And he said that, training camp competition may be a battle in name only. So Edmonds is getting the hype, people, and I think he deserves it. Again, he was the better running back than Kenyan Drake for much of last year. People were incredibly disappointed by how it was going. And that takes us right into our PFF Lily stat. And it is Kenyan Drake's goal line usage, because we've talked here on this podcast about the problems that having a mobile quarterback can cause for your running backs. They scramble instead of dumping the ball down, and they're also a factor to get carries inside the 5-yard line. Kyler was very comfortable, though, giving his guys chances once they got close to the goal line. Only Ezekiel Elliott, Dalvin Cook, and yes, Kenyan Drake had at least 20 rush attempts inside the 5-yard line last season. Absolute madness. Takes us to the ranks. I do have Chase Edmonds significantly higher than James Conner. Not quite buying the idea that this is going to be that split of a backfield. Edmonds is my RB 25. Conner is my RB 37. In terms of ADP, Edmonds comes in as the RB 28 and Conner is the RB 35 over at Underdog. I just think Edmonds is too low. He was the PPR in Underdog's half point, so maybe not. Maybe that's the difference there. But Edmonds was the PPR RB 25 last year, and now Drake's gone. So they like Conner, but I don't think they love the guy. I mean, his contract, and, I think money usually talks here. I believe his contract's only for like 1.75 million total. So, maybe, 1.75 million, 1 year deal. I mean, that's just not a big enough financial commitment. Kenyan Drake had like the transition tag. He was getting like 8 or 9 million last year. I think Edmonds is on pace to be the lead guy. And yeah, Conner will take some carries, but there's no one in this league other than really Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Saquon. And that's really it these days. Even Zeke isn't fully dominating Pollard as much. Those are your only true like one RB backfield. So no, Edmonds isn't going to have the entire allotment of snaps to himself, but it sure is looking like a 2 RB situation. All you Benjamin stands out there like, hey, maybe he carves out a role eventually, but we just haven't seen Kingsbury use multiple running backs. He had used one running back in 2019, whether it was David Johnson, Drake, even Edmonds for that awesome Giants game where he had the 3 touchdowns. And then in 2020, it was more split between Drake and Edmonds. So the biggest issue for Edmonds might actually not even be a running back. It could be Rondale Moore at wide receiver. And that's the only reason why I'm not comfortable pushing Edmonds into the top 20, because again, Edmonds was making his living as a receiver last year. Only Alvin Kamara, J.D. McKissick, and Nyheim Hines racked up more PPR points from purely receiving production. So Conner is probably going to be a lesser version of Kenyan Drake. I'd expect Edmonds to be more involved on the ground with Conner there instead of Drake. The problem is if we lose this fantasy-friendly target share to Rondale Moore on some of these design jet sweeps and screens and all that, that's going to be the issue. So, make sure we keep a close eye on how Rondale Moore is being used in the preseason and, leading up. If he's just like pulling an Andy Isabella and Kliff isn't going to use him for whatever reason, that's going to be even more reason to get behind Chase Edmonds as his present valuation. So we need those targets in fantasy football land. I haven't been getting a ton of Edmonds, but honestly, I think when, I've been doing more recent drafts, I actually have been starting to, because again, falling down the RB 28, that's even past, the 3rd, 4th round RB dead zone. So if you can get Edmonds as, your RB1 or RB2, if you're doing, one of these anchor RB or 0 RB strategies, I think it makes a lot of sense because again, he's being priced below his floor that we saw we already had last year. So Chase Edmonds, potential PPR darling. Conner, if he falls more into the 40 range, that's fine. I just don't think he's going to have a large enough role to kind of do what Drake did last year. I mean, I have Conner, behind guys like Gus Edwards, Darrell Henderson, the handcuffs, Pollard, Latavius Madison, guys like Nyheim Hines, Michael Carter, Trey Sermon, Jamal Williams, Kenyan Drake himself. So I guess I can see people bumping him up. I mean, he's certainly in a tier with a lot of these guys. I'm not saying I'm out on James Conner, but we do have a running back where don't want to call anyone injury prone. With that said, I have seen some studies that do show guys that have recovered from cancer, like Conner did, which is fantastic. They just have problems with extra injuries because of things that can do, in the recovery to the rest of your bone mass and all that. So I will talk to the actual doctor, Evan Porras. He's going to come on this podcast a little bit later in this offseason. You can find his work over at Fantasy Points. Always great stuff. But that was basically, and I don't want to quote the guy specifically, but when he came on this podcast last year, James Conner was the one guy, and he hates the term injury prone as well. But Conner was the one guy where he said, we should be careful about expecting him to stay fully healthy. He pretty much did so in 2020, but broke clock is right twice a day. Don't want to get too greedy thinking that's going to happen again in 2021. So thank you as always for tuning in to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I have one thing I want to get off my chest before you get out of here. I've been watching The Queen's Gambit on Netflix. Fantastic miniseries. I think it's 7 or 8 episodes long on Netflix. It's been out for a while, so maybe I'm missing the boat. But people, how cool would it be to have like those chess timers? And for those not familiar with chess, when they play, I think the way it works is like a pair will have like in certain tournaments, you'll have 90 total minutes to decide your move. So you're incentivized to move quickly, hit your timer, and the next person goes, and you can save your time up if you need to use it or just put more pressure on them. But you can't just sit there all day. Let's find a way to incorporate those like chess clocks in the fantasy football drafts, because nothing is worse, particularly in slow drafts, than when people are taking sometimes 8 freaking hours to pick. And even if you're in like a 1 minute, 90 second drafts, like let's go. Let's incentivize, people getting their picks out fast. I floated this idea out there on Twitter. Again, it's a little bit half baked. I haven't fully thought through everything, but shout out to my guy, Brian Johnson, for having a great call. What if we gave everyone, a minute per round, and then you got to use all your extra time as your fab going to next year. It's like 1 second would equal $1 of fab, and it would reward people for getting in, getting out, and getting those picks done quicker. So I think the one issue of fantasy drafts these days is people taking for freaking ever, and finding a way to incentivize them to pick more quickly would be awesome. So still thinking this one out. Make sure you let me know if you have any great ideas to build upon that over on Twitter. You can find me at iHartitz. So thank you as always for tuning in to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. New episodes out every single day. I'm gonna get out of here. Got about a 5.5 hour drive to Chicago, and hopefully, it doesn't mess up my voice any more than it already is. So again, appreciate y'all listening. And until next time, take care, everybody.